Muslim women should cover, and the non-Muslim women that aren't covered are not free from male sexual violence.
Some of these videos are a lot harder to do, not because of anything technical per se, or, even some sort of restrictions that I have on YouTube or other platforms, but because of the nature of the subject at hand, right? Just simply, they're uncomfortable conversations, but fortunately or unfortunately, I feel that it is necessary to get into them. And one of those subjects is many of the realities of ideologies such as Islam. Realities as far as what it is as opposed to what we've been told that it is, what it is as opposed to what we likely have sort of wanted to be in order to maybe satisfy our own sense of well-being and safety, and maybe even an aspect of ourselves where we simply don't want to seem as if we're judgmental or just picking on one group of people, etc. But I feel that if we don't get to the root of what we're dealing with, the level of danger is going to be a lot greater than I offended somebody, I made somebody feel some type of way because they felt targeted as far as their own belief system or ideology. And this is not too, it's not too different than what I've been doing when it comes to a lot of the radical left, the far left, the wokey woke folk on the left, as I would say, neo-Marxist, etc. It's not really much different besides the fact that here is a doctrine that promotes, perpetuates, and even asks for some level of violation of other human beings, right? It is written in the very code and the fiber, whereas something like, the progressive ideology, Marxism, alludes to these things, but it doesn't necessarily have these concrete, you must destroy the other person. But of course, if you read a little deeper into it, you'll realize that essentially it's calling for it at some level, right? To say that if these people, i.e. the oppressor class, is not bowing the knee to your demands, then you must do whatever is necessary. Whereas the deeper that I've gotten into Islam and understanding it as it has, been making its way into the Western world, is that it is far more sinister, not just dangerous as far as, violence per se, but there is, I feel like this video is just going to do more justice than I can speaking to you guys in this format. Now, the video I want to share with you guys today is a video about a young woman who is an ex-Muslim, and she essentially is sharing her understanding of why oftentimes white women are targeted by, different groups of predominantly Muslim men. I'm not saying that all Muslim men are this way and this is what they all do, but due to the nature of their own ideology, there's a reason why there's a disproportionate amount of these people, right? In the UK, you've likely heard of what they're, giving this euphemism of the quote unquote groomer gangs. More accurately, that would be the R-word gangs, right? Can't say the word on here, but if you catch that, you catch that. So you have this massive network of individuals from a very specific group, more specifically Pakistanis, who fall under Islam, who for decades have gotten away with the most heinous violations of young white women throughout the United Kingdom and likely, much of Europe, right? That's my own assumption as far as how widespread it probably is. And so again, in this video, this young lady is going to share why that is, because I feel it's again of the utmost importance for us to understand what we're dealing with in order to know how to approach it, or at the very least, to safeguard ourselves from it, to understand the severity of the problem, and to do all we can as a society to protect our freedoms. So let's get into this.
What are some verses or teachings that you think some, or progressives in particular, are not aware of?
Well, I think now that Islam has become so readily, like the sources have become so readily available online, I think more, are they aware of them, but they choose to ignore them because it doesn't fit the narrative of Islam is a religion of peace, or this was only meant for wartime, and they try and contextualize it and say this doesn't apply anymore. But I mean, the Quran itself, if you want to take like the violence as one section, the complete vitriol towards disbelievers, for example, like the verses to strike them at their necks, to amputate the opposite hands and from their feet if they spread corruption in the land, that they're the worst of creatures, that kill the infidels wherever you find them. Even Muslims themselves say that verses like that abrogate the peacetime verses, because where a lot of these progressives like to quote, oh, Islam says there's no compulsion in religion. That's the hot favorite. But that was a Meccan verse when Muhammad was all calm and lovey-dovey, rainbows and unicorns in Mecca, when he didn't have the power and he didn't have the manpower and the armies behind him. That soon changed when he got to Medina and they had done the hijrah, the migration. That's where the Islamic calendar begins from. Because from that migration onwards, Islam changed its nature forever. And so you've got these things where it says strike them at their fingertips or cast terror into their hearts. ISIS and terrorist organizations use those scriptures directly to get influence. There's videos of them striking, hostages of theirs at their fingertips. There's videos of them beheading because the Quran says strike them at their necks. And yeah, I think the proliferation of terrorism that can be found directly in the Quran is something that progressives just love to turn a blind eye to. And then the sheer misogyny. And this is why I like to always bring it back to the grooming gangs, because we need to talk about the religious motivation behind it. The fact that there's verses in the Quran, as I mentioned, the one about your wife or fearing disobedience, but there's other verses that go on to say, there's many that subjugate Muslim women, but non-Muslim women specifically, when there's it says, tell your women, O believing men, to bring down their cloth over their like bosoms or whatever to ensure their modesty and guard their modesty. And the line goes, so that they will not be harassed or molested. So that's like a delineation that Muslim women should cover, and the non-Muslim women that aren't covered are not free from male sexual violence. And that's where the issue comes.
I'll be honest, when I first watched this video, by the way, shout out to God, what's his name? I'm gonna make sure to link his channel below and link this video, hopefully the entire podcast episode itself. But when I first heard this, it was the first time I actually got the context of, oh, this is not only allowed, right? Because there's a difference between, okay, this is acceptable, it's okay. And there's something else entirely when you are directed to do something. That to me sounds like a direct order, right? Women, quote unquote, guard yourselves, mark yourselves basically, in order for us to know the difference between you and the other. Now, I'm going to share this personal story, and, hopefully my lady is comfortable with it. She probably would be. I don't know why she wouldn't necessarily, but she happened to be raised a Muslim till the age of around 10 years old. She was raised in Islam, and then, there was an entire rest of her story, basically. And this means that she is somebody visibly who I guess some would assume to be Muslim, right? She grew up in Belgium, so, people would assume her to be, as her Moroccan lineage shows itself phenotypically. She looks like a Northern African or, more, I guess, Semitic type of individual, if you may say that, than she does the Belgian side of her background. And one day we're actually doing one of her markets. Again, I don't give too much detail on my personal life for just the safety of the people around me as well as myself. But needless to say, we're out and about doing our thing. And she told me that a man walked by, looked at her, looked at me, and called her a whore. I don't know if I can keep that word on here. I'm going to make sure to timestamp that so I remember what it cut out. But He called her a streetwalker. Now, this was a Muslim man. You could tell because of the attire that his buddy had on. And again, this is an area that is proliferated by these individuals. I didn't obviously understand the words that he had used. And she told me later that, hey, I think he said this. And I was pissed off. Got beyond myself in that moment. I was like, he said what? Like, you know, you're not about to disrespect my people. You're not about to disrespect my lady like that. Yeah. You can come at me and it is going to be whatever it is, but you're not about to come. The dude had walked by, I'm looking for him. She told me, calm down. It's okay. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it wasn't actually directed to me, etc. But needless to say, here is an individual who is conditioned into the belief that, you know, our women, they cover themselves and the rest of their women, whoever they may be, are streetwalkers, are HO3s. I'm sure you can put 2 and 2 together there. That was a revealing moment for me because, again, when I think of these young women throughout Europe is where we're hearing most of this, but probably throughout Middle Eastern countries, throughout many of the Muslim countries, etc., or especially those which are populated with not just Muslims, but many non-Muslims, it gave me a depiction, a clear sort of image coupled with, you know, this sort of understanding of the teachings of the Quran to say that this creates for an atmosphere where it is not just acceptable, but it is something that the men are pushed towards doing. They're justified in doing so. And there's almost an honor in it. In the same way, there are these quote unquote honor, you know, honor executions of the quote unquote infidel. If you take a life of somebody who is not Muslim, then it is seen as an honor unto Allah, as if you take your own life for the cause. It's almost like anything goes if it's in the name of this religion. Now, some folks will say, well, what about Christianity? Doesn't it do the same thing? It's done the same thing throughout time. The difference is this: the doctrine itself, the religion itself on paper doesn't call for that. As a matter of fact, you can look back to Mosaic law and you can see that it calls for the opposite of that, to essentially be peacemakers. So when you look at the teachings of Christ, coupled with, you know, those 10 commandments or the 600 plus, you know, Mosaic laws or whatever it is, you can't point that to that directly where it says those who are non-believers, you must go out and destroy, you must handle. In fact, it says that God will handle those things in the way that God handles those things. So leave it be salt and light in the world, be an example of the good in the world, be peacemakers. So, yeah, again, I wanted to share that. You know, I've had that story kind of lingering in me. This happened not too long ago, I guess you say, relatively speaking. And so, you know, to just kind of couple these things together, it really is creating a more drawn out picture for me. And the more you learn, sometimes, you know, the more disturbed you may be, but there's also a sense of power or empowerment, I guess, that also comes with it, because you know the devil that you're facing. In essence, you understand. When there is a lack of understanding, usually there's only fear, right? You don't know what you don't know. And so most quote unquote European leaders, etc., I think they have simply stood on the side of burying their heads in the sand. I don't think they're all simply corrupt. I think there are those who are very corrupt, those who are sociopathic, etc. in nature, but I don't think all of them are. I think most of them are just cowards. I think most people will oftentimes lean towards cowardice, including myself. I was a coward. I was afraid to talk about many of these things. And there's still things that I'm emboldening myself to actually speak out on. So, yeah, let's get back to this. But again, it's disturbing stuff. But, you know, if we do not understand, my people perish for lack of what? For lack of understanding.
Comes from, and that's why when you hear the rhetoric of some of these groomers in the grooming gangs and the perpetrators, they say things like, sorry to say this, it's horrible, but they say things like, this is what white girls are for, and our girls are for marriage, but this is what white girls are for. Wow. And this is religiously justified because you act like this. You are not virgins. You drink. You wear these kind of clothes. So that modesty really kind of like even to this day goes into their psyche as
It's not true modesty, by the way. It's a weaponizing of modesty. That's how I see it. It's a weaponizing of these ideas. And what better way for sociopaths and psychopaths to galvanize and, essentially push forward than calling it a holy measure, a holy war per se.
something that they act on a daily basis. And there's so much more. There's like, just telling women that they're dumb, they get less inheritance, they need double the witnesses of men. There's no limit, like there's no lower limit on child marriage. So
That's in the Quran, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah, we're gonna pause on that one. I've done one segment on the quote unquote prophet of Allah known as Muhammad, as well as his child, quote unquote, bride. And the reason I'm not willing to call her a bride is because she was a child, a 6-year-old who was forced into this unholy union with a grown-ass man who is likely perverted. And this is something I did want to bring up as far as, the man behind this entire ideology to begin with. Because as a young lady said in this video, not sure what her name is, but what is that? Nuria? Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. As far as what Nuria referred to earlier, saying, well, there was a Muhammad before and then after, before the power and after the power. And to me, it simply looks like somebody who was power hungry, looking for a way to insert themselves. I mean, this guy was looking to infiltrate Christianity, infiltrate Judaism early on in his career. Early on. And because they would not accept, he then took different measures. He's then, started creating even a more hateful doctrine towards the Jew, towards the Christian, etc. If they had accepted his teaching, he would have likely had no problem with them in his doctrine. But they didn't. They weren't going for it. And so what better mechanism for as I said, a psychopath or, a narcissist, a dude probably who displays every single characteristic in all cluster B personalities. This guy was out of his mind. It wasn't just the power hungry. It wasn't just, the violent nature and things of that nature. The relational manipulation, the desire for vile, warped, and twisted things that this individual had. And this is the man that they have built their ideology on. I hope to never come off as somebody who's simply attacking Muslims, right? It's never been my intention. Just like when I speak of black culture and what has become in this, degenerate sort of remnants of a culture. I even have a hard time calling it that. It's simply this Frankenstein's monster of some of the worst attributes, and people have carried that forward as a culture. But that's not to say that this is who black people are. Arab people, those who are Semitics outside of Judaism, many of those who have adopted Islam or those who have been forced into it, they are not bad people in themselves. There are terrible individuals who use it. There are terrible individuals who resonate with that doctrine because it allows them to do what they want to do. But there are multitudes of very good people that get caught up in this. They're born into it, right? They're afraid to leave it behind. But you become an issue when you are now silent about it. When you now see those who are fundamentalists carrying out what that doctrine says, and you're not willing to do anything about it because you are afraid of the backlash and the ridicule, or, even for your life in that extent. And to that, I'd also say, what sort of religion looks to take your life if you leave, if it is not a cult? If it is not inherently evil, what God would treat you as such? There's a God who, seeks out the lost sheep, who will leave the 99 to go find the one that is missing, to bring them back home. And there's another God who says that you must be utterly destroyed if you leave my side. And that's the choice.
I'm of the understanding Muhammad had a 9-year-old wife, did he?
Yeah, a child
go.
bride.
Yep, here we
He
go.
married her at 6 and consummated the marriage. Consummated her at 9. So in the Quran, it says, it's talking about marriage in a verse, and it says, for those of your wives who have menstruated and those who are premenstrual, da 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 da. So there's no limit, there's no lower limit on, they're talking about little girls who haven't even hit like puberty yet. And
Yes.
what do you see happening in Afghanistan under the Taliban? They marry girls as young as 5, 6.
That is mental.
Yeah.
It's just horrific. I suppose. I mean, some people say, "Oh, well, those are the bad Muslims. Those are the ones who are not reading the Quran the right way, or something." What would you say to those people?
I say they're reading the Quran in the most literal form, in the most literal sense possible. There's nice, like, you can try and find other sources of Islam to try and negate what you find in the Quran. But if you get a lot of people who call themselves Quranists, and they say we reject all the hadith because that's just a long telephone game, and we don't know who's a liar and who's not, so how can we believe that? Even though, then how do you know to pray 5 times a day? Basic things of Islam fall apart if you only rely on the Quran. But you can find 3 prayers in the Quran at max.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
But these Quranists like to say, oh, we're so much better than, we don't follow all the bad malpractice in the hadith. But the Quran itself, as I said to you, you've got the calls to terror, you've got the misogyny, you've still got the wife beating, and you've got the child that's still very problematic. I'd say they are terrorists, not inspired by it. They are following it down to a T.
It's a funny thing that, because I feel a little bit like that about the Bible and the Torah or whatever, like all the religious things, because you always hear modern progressives or whoever, they always seem to say, oh yeah, but they're just not good Christians, or they're not good Jews, they don't read the thing right. And I sort of feel like how you just explained about the Quran. Yes, they are. You are supposed to stone an adulterer in a park or whatever, or if you go past, you're supposed to throw rocks at them. You are supposed to do all these things, and I sort of feel like either do it or don't.
Yeah, it's always the no true Scotsman with them. Always.
Yeah. You can't just sort of go, oh, I believe in this thing. Why? Oh, because the book says it. Well, then do what the book says. Because if I believed even a bit of what the book says, I'm doing all the book.
Yeah, exactly. That was little Nuria trying to do that. And you either chuck it all away or you go by the book.
How was that, trying to go by the book?
It's pretty depressing as a lifestyle, to be honest.
Yeah, I am going to refute that last point there. And I know what he's doing. I get it. It's to draw this parallel. But I think it was Dr. Godsad who kind of gave me the best almost formula of thought when it comes to dealing with religions. Because there's oftentimes this thing outside of, religiosity, I guess, more secular world, to say all religions are the same. Religious people do this, or religion ends up creating more division, destruction, etc. Well, Dr. Godsad uses Jainism as an example, right? The Jainists believe in not tampering with any life, not just human life, but all life. All life is sacred. Therefore, the fundamentalist Jainist will sweep in front of their feet in order to not even trample over an insect, right? How can you compare that to a book that says, destroy the infidel? Annihilate them completely. All right, so there's no contrast between those two. Now, the book I understand most is the Bible. And as far as I'm concerned, Christ came to fulfill the law, overcame the law, in essence. And so you're covered by grace. What you're instructed to do is to obey, is to follow Christ. That doctrine is love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. Which one of these laws is the greatest amongst them all? That one right there. Love God, love people. That sounds a little different than destroy all who are unlike you. It didn't say love Christian people. It didn't say love. And as much as sometimes, individuals like myself, or I can only speak for myself, I guess. Oh, well, you're hating people and etc. It's like, yeah, I can be petty. I can be a lot of things, but I have enough love to tell you the truth. I'm that type of guy. Because when I needed it most, when I was in addiction, when I was in the streets running around selling dope on it, The people who love me most are willing to tell me the hardest truths, even if it meant the rupturing of that relationship. And so I simply hope I can continue to offer the very same for those who come across me. All I have to give you is simply the truth, as difficult as it may be to consume, as as uncomfortable as it may be. If it isolates me, whatever it is, that's what I'm called to, because I believe that to be love. Correction is love. So love y'all. Appreciate y'all. Till the next time. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Now, if you'd like to stay around, make sure to click that little subscribe button down there, or you can show some love by going to the description below and clicking on the button titled Buy Me a Coffee. Leave a little something there, or click on the Cash App. Leave a little something here. Till the next time, peace. Aquarius. Where? I've been up for hours, I've been up for days, staring at the ceiling, I've been counting strays, I've been in my feelings, I've been out of mind, I've been getting visions of the other kind, I've been up for weeks, I'm in the counting blessings over counting sheep. I can never be the type to limit when it comes to me. I used to be the pleaser for the people, I ain't